He said, can I read something from the Bible? I won't read you the whole thing, but my servant will prosper, he will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted, just as many who were appalled at him. His appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any man, and his form marred more than human likeness. So he will sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. For what they were not told they will see, and what they had not heard they will understand. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground. He had no majesty or beauty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. You know, as they were reading this to me, a thought came into my head. I know who they're reading about. They're reading to me about Jesus Christ. And I find it very disgusting that they would do that. But I just let them continue. Surely he took our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him and afflicted. He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And, you know, the mythologies, as I understood it, that I had heard, you know, about dying for sin, stuff like that. Suddenly I was hearing them reading to me about this. And it was angering to me. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray, each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. See, I knew they were reading about Jesus Christ. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living for the transgression of my people. He was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich man in his death. They explained to me that he had been crucified with a murderer and a thief. I didn't need that explanation. I had seen paintings, Renaissance paintings, you know, the three crosses and that kind of thing. But I did need to know. I didn't know about Joseph of Arimathea giving him his tomb. He's the rich man who gave him his tomb for his death. And okay, fine, so what? For although he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth, yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And I knew that here was this nonsense about the resurrection. And the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, as he will bear their iniquities. Now, how many of you know where that's from? How many of you don't know where it's from? Does anyone not know? Where did you say it's from? I was asked at this moment. Now try and imagine yourself. We live in a culture in which people pick up the newspaper and they see on the front pages of the tabloids the nonsense about the shams and pretenders of the Christian faith. But and so everyone hears this and that and the term born again and all of these things. I had never heard that term. I had never heard about Jesus Christ. I had not been given the 4 spiritual laws by anyone. I had not been evangelized. Nothing. I had not heard the Word of God. So I was asked, picture yourself now, for the first time, if you can imagine. See, most people, even who have a dramatic conversion, they can't remember the first time hearing the Word because they lived in a society or culture where they were hearing the Word of God one way or another all their lives. And they just didn't believe it. That's a bunch of nonsense. I was asked, what do you make of this? I said, what's the big deal? Nothing. I said, anyone who was at the crucifixion, if it really took place, anyone who was there could have written it. They said, oh, you mean, you think it's speaking about the crucifixion? I said, well, obviously, that's clear. Speaking about Jesus Christ, the New Testament. Anyone in the New Testament could have written that stuff, so what does it prove? They handed me the Bible, and I saw the name Isaiah on the top of the page, and I thought I was going to die. I felt as though I had been stabbed and pierced and just over and over again. And then when that man said to me, it wasn't needed, but he said, that was written 700 years before Christ was born. You know, you've seen the movies where someone is killed and a few people just go and kick him anyway. He's lying there dead. That was the way I felt with that last statement. As though not only was I dead, but someone had just kicked the dead body again. You see, you have to understand, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home. I had been told Jesus was the crucifier of the Jews, that Jesus hated the Jews, that he was the Gentile God, and we had the Jewish God, who was Yahweh. And I was told that Jesus was, Catholic or Protestant, and had hated Israel and hated Jewish people. And suddenly I was confronted with the person who hated my people, as I understood it, more than anyone, and I knew, in that instant, I knew he was God. And I knew that I had to submit. My wife and I didn't talk about these things. I knew that my life had to be completely submitted to him, because I knew that if God, it truly exists and has revealed himself this way, and Jesus is God, because he's written this all about himself and it happened, then he doesn't say, well, now you believe it, go off and live your life, have fun, do what you want, and when you die, don't worry about it. I'll be there to take you home. I knew that it demanded my life. And that was terrifying. I sat there thinking, why did it have to be Christ? Why not Buddha? Why not Krishna? Why not anyone else but him? But then the thought hit, but this is truth. I knew it was true. Do you know, it was the first moment in my life that I knew I had come in contact with absolute truth. It was the instant that I knew that there was absolute truth in the universe. And it was connected with something that, to me, was bizarre. But I went back. I left there. And, I assumed, I was frightened. I assumed that I was the only Jew in the world who knew this. Because I'd never met another one who did. I had never even met a Gentile who I assumed knew it. No one had ever said anything to me about it. But I knew, I didn't know what would be, but I knew that the living God was with me every day, every step of the way. And that was the beginning. There was a moment where not only did I know that commitment and that surrender had to be made, but where I made it. And not that one is ever completely submitted or surrendered to God. There's always sin. But there can be a point where you have closed the door to an old way of life, where you close that door and you renounce and repudiate sin. And I mean by sin is the whole way of life that you lived. You know that that's wrong. That happened. Not that it happened. That was part of... I knew, for example, when I went back, that psychology could no longer be my God. That the lure and the attachment, my life had been devoted to this. I had made my peace with meaninglessness in it and was committed to pursuing it for nothing else other than simply affluence and perhaps fame in it. I knew that even if the whole community of which I was a part were to deem me to be insane, which was the worst curse that could happen to a person with a shrink, that I would surrender myself to that.